2021 Legislative Advocacy, Part 4 of 4. Hello, I'm Cheryl Ciceros from the Oregon Developmental Disabilities Grassroots Oregon, or GO Project, online training for the 2021 legislative session. We hope that you enjoy this part of our online training. Now let's go. Your voice matters. Your story is important to legislators who represent you and your community. There is power in your personal story. For example, we often share the story about how our family was in crisis. Our health and safety were at risk, and we were becoming isolated. Once connected with family networks, they helped strengthen our family by connecting us with other families, ending our isolation, and strengthening our community by helping it become more welcoming to diverse families. This shares a story of how we were in crisis and how our situation improved with the connection with family networks. You might also share stories of systemic emergency response, like the COVID response. You might share stories about how direct support professionals face the threat of COVID every shift so people with disabilities would have the supports they need to stay healthy and safe. Regional family networks immediately began supporting families with at-home activities and reduced isolation by keeping families connected. Case management entities provided trusted information and resources to help people adapt and take necessary precautions throughout the pandemic. The state does need a data system to ensure that everyone is known and supported through public health crises. You might also share stories of systemic emergency response related to the wildfires in Oregon. Regional family networks in those areas quickly identified families who needed support and leveraged their community connections to meet the immediate needs of families displaced from their homes. Case management entities continued to help people rebuild their lives devastated by wildfires. Direct support professionals were on the front lines during the wildfires, taking swift action to get people with developmental disabilities to safety, even before knowing if their own homes or families were safe. We need an accessible, connected data system to further expedite our emergency response. You might also share stories of systemic inequities and discrimination. Many people with disabilities and their families face additional barriers to accessing services such as healthcare, education, and housing because of the color of their skin, the language they speak, their gender identity, and/or limited resources. We saw countless examples of inequities related to support in hospitals during COVID, access to COVID vaccines, access to education during COVID. People with disabilities continue to endure systemic inequities and discrimination. A stable system of support provides a foundation on which to address these issues. So how do you connect with legislators during COVID? You can send an email or call them on the phone, schedule a video meeting, or send letters and cards. If you are contacting your state senator and your state representative, it's good to introduce yourself as their constituent, meaning that they represent you and you live in their district, so they care about what you have to say. You should specify the topic or bill number that you're trying to reach them to discuss. It's great to connect with staff members if your legislator is not available. Send photos when you can, and be sure to follow up any visit or communication with a nice thank you. One thing that's really unique about this legislative session is that most of the contact that we will have with legislators will be via video meetings. When you're scheduling these meetings and during these meetings, identify yourself by your name and your city. Specify what issue you want to talk about, including the bill number or budget item. Provide personal impact stories and express your appreciation for their time. When preparing for these meetings, it's important to dress nicely and to have a nice environment in your background. We want to set a nice example and professional appearance impression when working with our legislators. So here are some advocacy activities we want to make sure that we review before we end our training. We encourage you to visit our Oregon DD Coalition website, like us on Facebook, join our network for Go bulletins and alerts, watch our other Go project videos, research your state legislators, and e-subscribe to their email newsletters. And then, of course, schedule legislative visits to talk about what issues are important to you. Now let's go.